Hey guys, how's it going? ItZMuRdA here. I'm joined by BB, who's hopefully not going to make this dysfunctional, but we'll see what happens. I'm here with a preview video on the infill update that's coming out tomorrow for at least what's scheduled for Thursday, February 13th, along with a lot of the Valentine's Day items for this weekend and just kind of the Valentine's event that's going on. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Going to try to do some actual hands-on preview in addition to the patch note overview that I'll do as well tomorrow once the actual patch notes are out and live and things like that. So keep in mind some of this is not fully complete on the version that I'm on test right now, but it will be for tomorrow. Others may be placeholders or for text or values or things like that may change, but I'm going to give you the best preview that at least I can at this point in time. So I'm going to kind of be jumping around a little bit from infill stuff to some Valentine stuff later on. I am starting out using one of the Valentine's crossbows as well as a Valentine's camo, but we'll discuss that a little bit more later on. The first thing I wanted to talk about is motion sensors or motion spotters, the new alternative to the recon dart that infills have available to them, and the Darklight Flashlight, since I'll need an assistant for these. But anyway, motion spotter is basically at max rank, at least, has the same spotting range as the recon tool. 50 meters. It lasts a heck of a lot longer. Instead of 40 seconds, it's 240 seconds, but you can only have one down at a time, so you can't just be shooting them out all over the place. And basically, I think they did a really good job of making them the go-to item for kind of the other half of the spectrum, where it's good for instance, holding a point or something like that when you know you're going to be stationary. So if I plop one down, if I can see past BB's head, if I plop one down, that's what they look like. Oh, maybe you can actually put more than one down now. That's a good question. Couldn't before. Nope, it despawns it. So anyway, that's what it looks like. It's got, I guess, some very, very tiny animations. It does have a map icon that can be spotted and stuff like that. And you can see on my mini map as Shandara runs around, who's my wonderful assistant. The blip on the map, the arrow if you will, updates completely in full time. So if you're moving at all, especially if you're sprinting, even if you're cloaked, as you can tell right now, as long as you're still moving at run speed, it's a 100% real-time update, and for 50 meters radius, that's pretty huge. So as you can tell, if you're in a spot where you're camped in or whatever, you're holding down B point at a base, you're in a tower, you're in a biolab, having these is going to be like full radar uptime, which is pretty ridiculous. But at the same time, it doesn't nullify the sensor darts, because having the ability to shoot out multiple ones and things like that is still really beneficial. So for solo play, I'm probably still going to be leaning towards the sensor dart, and for ops play and group coordinated types of stuff, I'll be leaning towards the motion spotter. But ideally, you run two infills. One has each, and they really complement each other well. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the Darklight Flashlight, which I am personally not a fan of, but I'll have to live with it. And it's basically replacing the flashlight on all weapons, pistols, crossbows, main weapons, anything that had a flashlight before and should have a flashlight in the future is going to have the Darklight Flashlight. Now it's 100 certs as the norm, but in addition to actually giving off some light, if you toggle it on here, unlike flashlights not really doing this in the past, it gives off some decent light. Granted, it's pretty early here on Amurish, so you can't really tell the full effect of the light by itself. It does also detect infills, so when she's uncloaked, it looks fine, but when she's cloaked, you get the basically what it looks like if it's a friendly infill, but just in their Empire colors when you catch them in the beam, if you will. Like I said, I'm not a fan of it. I think infills are already really easy to see, but it is just an extra added thing that you can throw on. You do have to forego a laser sight or a foregrip or something like that. You can get a better idea a little bit of the range here and stuff like that. If I back out, there it goes away, but then it comes back in. So it is what it is. It's probably not going to be a huge deal. It's something we'll deal with. Like I said, I didn't think it was really necessary, but it is here, and it's also worth noting that it's pretty easy to spot. Maybe if you turn down some graphic settings. My graphic settings are generally pretty low to medium, and I find it easy enough to spot. Like if Shandara turns hers on, you'll get an idea. Again, it would be a lot more noticeable at night, but you get an idea that, you know, somebody, you know, some Metal Gear Solid type of shit, or, you know, one of those Splinter Cell something, somebody's got a flashlight, and you might want to avoid it if you're an infiltrator. So you do have that indicator to look out for, and try to avoid at all costs. Any flashlight you see like that will spot you, essentially, or at least make you appear in that shimmery fashion. So that's what you have to look out for or use if you are going to be utilizing, or at least trying to avoid, Darklight Flashlight. I'm personally never going to use it. If you didn't really want to use it because you didn't want to give up a laser sight or a foregrip, you could always throw it on a pistol and then like have a pistol to pull out to scan for infils or something like that. But I personally don't think it's worth it to me. But it is an extra potential frustration for infils, or just something else they'll have to look out for, as well as something to aid people who have a hard time seeing them, whether it's they play on lower settings or they just aren't, you know, familiar with what to look for. But anyway, that's what that looks like. And then yeah, there's a motion sensor from here. Alright, gonna try to get into some of the other stuff. There's a lot of new weapons and things like that, as well as some suit slot and ability slot upgrades. So I'm actually gonna pop on back to VR. And thank you again, Shandara, for the test. Can you see me? Nice. Because I couldn't have done that by myself, so I appreciate it. So I'm going to hop on over to VR. Something I probably should have done, but before I go to VR, I guess you can't really see it in sync. I suppose this is just as good of a test anyway as VR, so never mind. Forgive me. I was kind of forgetting that there's no splash damage enabled in VR, but we'll go over that when we get to the crossbows. I don't believe any of these loadouts actually saved. Oh, maybe some of them did. But anyway, we're gonna go over, I guess, the new ability and the new suit slot, or extra suit slot that infils now have access to. We're talking about Stalker Cloak for the ability slot. I'm really not a fan of it. Just in short, what it does is makes it so that you can't actually use a primary weapon. So like if I have a sniper rifle equipped here, I can't actually equip it. I have to use my secondary, which is this crossbow. Even though it looks really awesome, it is a secondary. So if you just try to, it'll say primary weapon slot disabled. But what you get for that trade-off is the ability to regen your cloak while you are stopped moving. So if you see my cloak bar going down, down, down while I'm running, sprinting, crouching, anything movement, and then I just stop, it'll start regenning. So for anybody who wants to potentially have full uptime on their cloak, you can make advantage of this, or take advantage of it, but you'd have to forego using your primary weapon. Not something I'm a huge fan of, since even though you have crossbows and you have commissioners and you have things like that that are good sidearms, you have proximity mines and other sorts of things that you can make use of offensively. In this case, you still have, apparently, I am like just forever crouching now. Is this like a bug on test? This is interesting. There we go. I wasn't jumping before. Weird. Anyway, so that's the deal with the Stalker Cloak, and I personally don't think it's worth it, just for my playstyle, because I not only do I want a primary weapon, but I'm also very aggressive. Even with Hunter Cloak, which lasts pretty long, recharges pretty quickly, I'm constantly like not waiting. You know, I'm running into battle with like 1 second left on my cloak, knowingly so. And maybe that's just foolish gameplay on my behalf. I'm not sure, or overconfidence, but. I don't see myself, you know, going, oh shit, I gotta stop. Let me just sit in this corner for a few while it regens. Especially given the fact that not only are you sacking your primary weapon, but your stats on your cloak recharge is considerably worse than the Hunter Cloak. So if you assume both of them are maxed out, if you have Hunter Cloak 6 and Stalker Cloak 5, it's going to take 18 seconds to recharge your energy while standing still cloaked, or uncloaked. There's no reason to do that, I guess, unless you have to be running. Whereas Hunter Cloak recharges in only 8 seconds. So it's more than double the amount of recharge time. Whereas if you could just find a spot to uncloak, or, you know, uncloak and recloak as you're running through a field or whatever, you're going to kind of get that recharge anyway from Hunter Cloak. I don't know if they were keeping this 18-second value final. I saw some talks about it, so they very well may change when the patch hits tomorrow, but that's what it is at the moment. It also only lasts 8 seconds. So like if you're, you know, running with it or whatever, this drains in 8 seconds, whereas Hunter drains in 12. So I personally just don't see it being worthwhile, especially since you have to sack the primary weapon Even if you didn't have to sacrifice the primary weapon, I don't know that I would use it in most cases, but that's just more of a playstyle preference. But it is there for those of you who might want to be a little bit more conservative about it, those of you who like your secondary weapons, your utility items, and things like that. So use it if you want. It may certainly have some usage, especially with a powerful secondary like a crossbow, but I personally am going to usually be sticking with Hunter for the most part. Adrenaline Pump, they added to the suit slots, which if you're familiar with it from Light Assault, it does the same thing. I believe it's a 10% sprint speed increase, unless they've changed that. I have been actually running around with it on so far. It's somewhat negligible. I haven't actually tested it with the Infil version, but I did test it with the Light Assault version a while ago. And with PlanetSide and all things considered, if you have somebody with it and without it running in line, like, it takes a long time for the person that has the adrenaline pump to actually, catch up to or surpass the person that doesn't have it. And it is only sprint speed, so strafe speed, movement speed, any sort of other speed is not going to be increased with it. I personally think it's too big of a sacrifice over like nanoweave armor, for instance, to use it. But it is there if you want to get in, get out, and be quick. A lot of these things do synergize with one another. For instance, the crossbow, the adrenaline pump, and the Stalker Cloak could be like a really good conservative / hit and run type of infill if you wanted to play that. But they don't really fit into my typical build, honestly. They're there, and they're relatively, especially adrenaline pump, I think is still only like 30 certs or so. Relatively inexpensive option. But they are what they are, and I'm just being honest. I personally don't think I'll be using them, but they are there for you, and they are viable in certain situations for sure. And that's mostly just talking about the Stalker Cloak and Adrenaline Pump and the Darklight Flashlight. That's not to say I hate everything about this infill update, because the motion spotter is awesome, and as I mentioned, it serves a really nice purpose to have both that and the dart. I don't think they could have covered those bases much better than they did with alternatives by having two really powerful options that do kind of the opposite well. Their strengths are oppositely enforced, but that works really well for team play and using them together or using them situationally and so on and so forth. But anyway, let's get on to some weapons and weapon attachments, I suppose. I'm probably just going to throw on any old sniper rifle first, like the default bolt driver, to show you guys the straight pull bolt in action, which they've just added to all sniper rifles. I still have Stalker Cloak on, LOL, so I can't equip it. But just in case you didn't know, it makes it so you don't have to actually zoom out to pull the bolt back after each shot, so I can, out of habit, do it anyway. I can shoot this person, and then I can shoot this person, and I can shoot this person. There's obviously still that downtime, that rechamber time in between shots, but if you have 5 shots in your mag or whatever, you can go from person to person to person. The other good thing about it, which, I had wanted a straight pull bolt from the start, and I'm really glad that they finally added it. The other good thing about it is you can actually get 3 shots off in, where are they all despawning to? 3 shots off in one holding breath. So if you hold breath now and you shoot, and you're still holding breath, and you shoot again, and you shoot again, then only now does your breath kind of drop, and you have to wait whatever it is, 2 seconds or 3 seconds before you can do it again. So it's just something to keep in mind. If you have 3 shots you can line up back to back, or at least 2 shots that you can line up in close succession. That's a huge buff, I would say, because one of the biggest downsides, both quality of life and in actuality of sniping for me, was the hold breath mechanic and the relatively short duration, as well as the cooldown that would then ensue thereafter. You would hold your breath, take a shot, and then you'd have to pull the bolt back, you take another shot, and then like your breath is ready to not be held again essentially right away, or maybe you'll get 2 shots off, but definitely not 3 in a row like that. So that's something to consider when you're using it. I don't really see any reason not to. There isn't. I don't believe they actually went through with any downsides to it, as far as I can tell, and I'm pretty happy about that. So I'll be throwing that on any sniper rifle that I use, for what that is worth. Speaking of additional weapons, there are some sniper rifles. I'm going to go through them a little bit later because they're Empire specific in nature. At least 3 of the 4 of them are. So I want to be able to hop to different characters to show you guys that. But I will first go over the new NS SMG, which is available to all of the factions. It's the MKV Suppressed. Really similar to the regular NS SMG, the NS7 that we're familiar with. So if you compare stats here, you'll notice that it has a little bit more rate of fire, and that trade-off is for a little bit slower reload speed. So that makes sense, right? That's okay. That in and of itself is totally fine. But you'll notice if you read the tooltip that it has a built-in suppressor, as you might have guessed by the suppressed name on the actual name of the gun, which I'm not too fond of. If you're somebody who likes suppressors on your SMGs most of the time, then hey, maybe this one saves you 100 certs and you kind of get a little bit more efficiency on top of it. But I'm not somebody who uses suppressors in most cases, and as such, you're taking a bullet velocity hit here that you can see 400 down to 330, just comparing these two, as well as a damage efficiency at range. Your drop off for your max damage is 10 meters instead of 15, and you're dropping off to 91 instead of 100 at 42 instead of 65 meters. So it's actually a pretty significant hit in mid to long range effectiveness, just because you're essentially forced to equip a suppressor. Now I think it's a cool idea. I'm not sure what else they could have really done for an SMG, and as such there are no barrel attachments for it. It's just your normal attachments for rail, optic, and ammo otherwise. So I would still probably roll it with the typical soft point 1X and either an advanced laser or an extended mag. It functions perfectly, normally like any SMG would, or like the NS7 would, for instance. Like I said, you're going to notice a slightly slower reload for a slightly faster rate of fire. But it's basically like there's an invisible suppressor on it. So if that's your thing, go for it. By all means, try it out. But for me, it kind of takes a back seat on the SMGs. I'm still going to be using it for Araxiums and stuff like that, and probably all three colors of it eventually. But it's not really my style of SMG. When I'm looking at an SMG, I'm looking for at the very least something like the second gens, the 50 or 60 round magazine ones that just give a ton of versatility, or I'm looking for something like the Cyclone that NC has, where it's really just hard hitting, fast reloading, in your face, doing a lot of damage, rather than the more recon / conservative suppressed infill approach. But here it is, and it is viable for what it's worth if that's your thing. So I wanted to just go over that real quick. Then we have the crossbow. We have a bunch of different iterations of them. We have the usual, the Hunter QCX is the NS crossbow. The B is the black version, and the G is the gold version, as we've come to expect with NS weapons. Same stats, just going to cost a different amount of station cash for the black and gold. And then there is the Blackheart and the Heartstring, which I'll go into a little bit more detail about Valentine's after I'm done with going through the weapons. But these are the Valentine's themed versions, kind of like the snowball gun or the flare gun that we've seen for holidays in the past. I'm assuming they're only going to be available during Valentine's Day, but instead of being like the snowball and the flare gun, they are actually the same stats as these other guns, and competitive in that right. So if you want a pink one or a purple one, or whatever you want to call these are what they look like. That would be something to buy during the Valentine's holiday, and it'll function just the same as the NS ones. So I guess I will throw on the Heartstring. I've got no camo on it at the moment. Keep in mind they are a pistol slot item, which you probably figured out already because I've insinuated that, but I don't think I actually said it. Doing a hefty 650 damage all the way out to 30 meters and dropping off only to 500 at 50 meters, meaning in most cases you're getting a lot of one-shot headshots, and you're getting a lot of two-shot body shots. It's not always going to be the case. There's factors such as nano-weave and heavy shields and healing and range and stuff like that, but that's, I'd say, kind of pretty standard with it, which is nice. The rechamber time on it is pretty slow. It's kind of like you're going to get three shots off with a commissioner, and at the same time you're going to get one of these off, in terms of if you were shooting back to back to back. So in that sense, from DPS standpoint, it's not there, but it's high risk, high reward, especially if you can pop out, shoot somebody in the head, or even just a couple body shots. You can throw the typical closer range scopes on it, no barrel attachments. You can throw, oops, I'm on the wrong weapon. You can throw either the Darklight Flashlight or a laser sight on it. I'm always going to go the laser sight option. Just want to make sure I had it equipped already. And then there are the different bolt types as well. So there's a detect bolt and an explosive bolt, or no bolt at all. I wish we actually had the damage stats and things like that on the explosive bolt in here, but as you can see, it's blank at the moment. I assume it'll be in when we have it out. So I'm not going to use any bolts first, and it's just actually at longer range the drop on it's pretty significant. Like I actually aimed above that guy's head. Okay, that one was. I'm not sure where the drop actually happens. I actually did a scrim only using crossbows with Future Crew and DA last night to try to get the hang of it down, and even that was like at his head, and I think it actually went over his head. Oh, the as you might be able to tell, the Valentine's versions emit hearts and things of that nature as well. But anyway, The drop is probably going to be the biggest point of getting used to the weapon. As far as, I guess I'm not one-shot headshotting those guys, or maybe I am, but I don't know. Anyway, I saw some actually pretty mixed results with. I was getting a lot of one-shot headshots last night during the scrim, but anyway, as I was saying about the drop, I know I'm kind of just like going all over the place with this. That's probably the biggest thing to get used to, because pretty far back I'm trying to just like shoot and then move. It has quite the downward arc to it, so I don't know how many targets I have that are far out there, but it is a really fun weapon. Like, I guess that was a little too high. Or maybe they just patched in a better drop overnight and I'm going to look like an idiot instead. But either way, it's fun to use. It's not you know, such an overpowered secondary or something like that that is going to be whatever, but it's not downplayed to the point of the snowball or the flare gun, where it's kind of like not viable at all. It actually has pretty good hip fire, as you can see here. I do have the laser sight on it, but I mean, at this range it's going to hit almost every time, as long as you've got, you know, your sights on the target. So that's pretty cool as well. And I think I'm going to be running it a lot, if not just for fun, for actual effectiveness. Having that 650 damage follow-up, if you're, you know, as long as you can land your shots, is going to be extremely rewarding. So that's basically how it functions in and of itself, and then there are the extra two bolt things. So the explosive bolt, unfortunately there's no splash damage in VR, this is what I was thinking of testing outside, but I did test it, so I have an idea. It probably would do damage to this guy at about this range. It's not a huge splash, but it's probably enough to do it at like that range. So take that for what it's worth. It's going to be more efficient at killing maxes, but still not like you're going to solo a max head-to-head with a explosive bolt crossbow. Likewise, it would do some vehicle damage, but pretty minimal in the scheme of things for a crossbow, at least with all tuning considered. I know there were some weird damage numbers on test at one point in time. In addition to that, it's going to sacrifice direct damage. You're not going to get, I don't even think it does a two-shot headshot, or maybe it does if you're in max damage range, but it definitely does lower single target damage, so keep that in mind. It's not just like you're going to want to upgrade your bolt just because you can, because if you're hunting infantry with it, I at least found that it was better to you know, not have a bolt equipped. The numbers could change when that goes on live, and I could be totally lying to you right now. But I guess we'll follow up with the patch notes when we see for sure. Like I said, I was hoping to have a little bit more specifics on it for this. The detect bolt is interesting. It's basically, I'm not sure what rank equivalent it is, but it's like a lower quality version of a sensor dart. You can see the icon on the map as I shoot them out, which is actually quite interesting, that you have the potential for any class, not infiltrators alone, to carry up to 20 of these things and rearm and just shoot them out willy-nilly however they want. So that's actually just a whole nother dynamic, and probably a whole nother discussion and video even on non-infils having that support, but they're intended to be used kind of as a weaker version, not to replace the infill support role entirely, especially with the motion sensor that's coming out. So you only run, you know, one infill on a 12-person team, you can now actually have some sensor darts as sidearms on your other classes and have the infill actually run motion sensor. So it opens up some interesting ideas, and I guess that I'll leave it at that. I wasn't sure really how I felt about giving what has inherently been such a strong infiltrate to essentially everybody, but it is a weaker version. For what that's worth, and I guess that's just up to you guys to decide whether or not it's worth using and how you feel about it. I personally, if I notice that I'm in a fight where nobody's using sensors or darts or motion spotters or anything like that, and I feel like I'm playing, you know, heavy assault or something, maybe I'll occasionally throw it on so that I have that capability. But I don't think it's something I would personally sacrifice on any class to just not have a sidearm, because so often I'll be reloading and I'll have to switch to a sidearm and actually rely on it for damage, whereas this one does, I believe, quite awful damage, if any. I mean, it's obviously giving me, you know, some damage indicator here, but it's not a competitive amount of damage. We're talking like concussion nades over here. So for what that's worth, this person now has a lot of scan darts stuck to them. But anyway, yeah, it definitely has a lot of new angles of usage and functionality for recon and support and things like that, even for non-info classes. Moving on beyond the crossbows, we have some new sniper rifles. The first is that I'm going to show you is an NS, which obviously has the wrong icon in here at the moment and no description, so we're going to work with it. It's basically a new semi-auto sniper rifle that's available to all factions. It runs some typical barrel attachments, none of which I particularly think are strong for a semi-auto sniper rifle. But the wonderful thing that it runs is a laser sight, and I hope that's intended, I hope that goes live, and I hope that that is indication of us seeing laser sights on more sniper rifles in the future. So I know this video is getting long, but bear with me, I wanted to get this out there, hopefully it helps somebody out. But anyway, I'm going to run it with just a 1xNR laser sight so you guys have the idea of what it looks like. It's not extremely competitive hip fire, but it's there. I mean, like, most of your shots at a range like that will still hit. Oh, right. The scope's bugged on it, so I can't really ADS too well with it. But it's a typical semi-auto. You know, it probably feels like a semi-auto Scout, or like the Impetus and guns like that, the close semi-auto sniper rifles. So it's actually more my style than a typical sniper rifle, and I'll probably be picking this up for Noraxium sooner than I would be actually moving to bolt actions and the sniper rifles that enforce like a 6x or larger scope. Especially the fact that it has a laser sight on it, so I really like that because, you know, somebody jumps in your face and you're actually able to take them out pretty efficiently. So that's what that looks like. Forgive the scope animation, hopefully that's fixed for tomorrow as well. But I think that's actually going to be a decent middle ground, and I'll be happier to use that, like I said, than one of the longer range snipers. Moving beyond that, last thing before the Valentine's Day stuff, which I'm just going to cover super quick, is the new Empire-specific sniper rifles. And there's been some changes and some things, and there's no actual attachments, kind of like the MCG and the Jackhammer and the Lasher started out with. There's placeholder descriptions, so we'll see what changes in that regard tomorrow, but they actually look pretty cool. Just to give you an idea, the shotgun portion, if you're familiar with it, got scrapped for now. I won't go into it just because of how long this video has been already, but this is like your extremely high-powered, high-damage, very fast, you know, monster of a single-shot bolt-action sniper rifle. And for now, I mean, that means what? I mean, it's not going to be too compelling to show you me shooting targets standing still and missing them for them. Maybe he despawned. Nope, he didn't. I'm just bad. In VR, but it's extremely heavy damage for a sniper rifle. Or at least on that heavy end of it, 750, and so on and so forth. It's your typical bolt action, just, you know, on a little bit of steroids, just a little bit in terms of the punch that it packs, if you will. I'm gonna hop on TR and VS just to show the alternatives. It's a shame that this isn't the best venue for showing you sniper rifles in VR, but just so you have an idea of what they're doing. I'll show you the TR and the VS as well. TR is a bit different, like where that just, you know, kind of emphasized a higher power sniper rifle, bolt action rifle. This gives you a 20 round sniper rifle with a quite interestingly bugged ADS that actually has pretty decent hip fire for not having a laser sight, and it can be completely automatic, which isn't terrible. You know, I hesitate to say that without, you know, the final version essentially being in. But if I'm not compensating for this vertical recoil, or horizontal even, I'm not going to move my mouse. Like, it's pretty bad. It's really bad. So that's something to keep in mind. If you're trying to stay on a target like that, you're going to have to be dragging your mouse pretty significantly. But if you do, it does pack a considerable punch. There is also a alt fire mode, which makes it more like a Saber 13, the medic assault rifle, which gives it a 2 burst. So your shot's basically going to be shots that will usually hit target. The second shot still kicks a little bit. So if you're aiming for the head, you might need to, you know, keep that in mind, especially if it's at a distance. But you can fire those burst rounds off pretty easily by switching firing modes on it, and that might help you control it a little bit better. I'm not a huge sniper. I know the reception for it generally hasn't been super great yet, but it is something that brings like a completely new role to the table of a burst / fully auto 20 round mag sniper rifle in the game, which we haven't seen before. So take that for what it's worth. Let me know what you think about it if you actually do snipe. But I'm just trying to give you the most efficient preview that I can for the time being. The VS, much like the TR, offers something, probably no surprise if you're familiar with VS traits, but something different from the typical sniper loadout at the moment as well, and that's a charged-based sniper rifle. So if you notice, this looks a lot like the Lancer. You can just take a shot, and it takes... You'll notice the bar down bottom, my ammo bar, kind of being like an item that would overheat. So if I fire in rapid succession, I'm pretty much overheated after 5 shots. There is no reload or anything like that. I have to wait for it to go down, so you probably don't want that in most cases. But you can actually fire it pretty fast in rapid succession if you need to, and likewise you can also charge, and if you charge completely, you're going to get a one-shot headshot, or he's going to despawn, but it's going to drain the bar entirely and require you to wait to have it recharge as well. I won't pretend to have done enough number crunching on this to know if it's worth doing like a mini charge and then firing. That seems like it still used the entire bar. If it's worth spamming it, it probably often, you know, will depend on the situation as well. If somebody jumps around the corner, you're going to want to get a few quick shots out. If you have somebody standing still at long range, you're going to want to charge it up and then pop them in the head. I would think that would be standard. I know a lot of people don't care too much for the charge mechanic, and there's been a lot of debate. I will leave that to the people who actually do the sniping most of the time on live servers. But that is the preview for what it's worth. It's extremely long. I do apologize, and I will quickly show you the Valentine stuff that's coming. There's been a big post on this. I'll link it in the description. So I'm not going to go through every single item. It will mostly be the stuff towards the top of the infantry gear and the vehicle gear portions here. There's lots of different heart camos. There's some heart decals, some Player Studio, others just made by SWE. I'd say mostly Player Studio. There are the 2 crossbows, and keep note of these 2 bundles, right? So there's the cheap date and the unwanted advance bundle. Thanks for the names. I'm assuming that's Taylor's doing, which are actually really good savings. 9,500 station cash worth of items for 3,000, but at least at the moment they are the exact same thing, with the addition of one having a heartstring crossbow and one having a black heart crossbow. So keep that in mind, that you're most likely going to only want to buy one of these if you do. I'm definitely going to buy one because I'm somebody who usually buys all of this type of stuff anyway. So I'm going to buy one, and then I'm going to buy the other crossbow by itself, because paying 3,000 for both doesn't seem like it makes sense at the moment, unless they decide to change the contents of the bundle to have that. But right now, if it stays the same, I'll buy one of these bundles, and then I'll buy the other crossbow by itself. But you do get a lot of really cool stuff. You get the horns, you get a hood ornament, and most of the camos that are Valentine's themed in the bundles. So do look out for those. And then there's going to be a few other things, basically. Like, I don't think some of these camos are in it, and I don't think the decal is in it, stuff like that. But a lot of it is. So most of these camos are, the horns are, the hood ornament is, and you know, the crossbows. So I'm probably going to go, you know, 3,001 bundle, 1,400 to another bow, and then, you know, see what's left and what else I might want to buy. But there's some really cool stuff, and I'm really thankful that they did the bundle thing, because I would have probably spent more than this anyway, just buying various things. So I'm really glad that they discounted that, and I hope to see them continue to do that for holidays and events and things like that in the future, because that's awesome for those of us who like to try to collect as many, especially exclusive things, as possible. So all this stuff is set to release with the patch on Thursday, and hopefully we're still on schedule for that. So I will be making a patch note overview video after that launches, not to go into nearly as much detail, but just to go through the patch notes and probably reference this video in the process. So that's it for now. I know I say that's it, but that was a lot. But thanks for tuning in. I hope it helped. Maybe you can even skim through the video, or hopefully you have, if there were certain things you wanted to hear about and not others. But anyway, you guys have a good one. Be sure to check out the stream over at ItZMuRdA.com, where I stream PlanetSide 2 pretty much every day, as much as I possibly can, and I really appreciate the support. So thanks again to Shandara for helping out with the assistant volunteer at the beginning, and you guys have a good one. Happy Valentine's Day.